The following is John's full conversation with Dr. Kathryn Norton Coffey from our first episode. It focuses on play and games in elementary math classrooms.
Welcome, I'm Dave,
I'm John.
and this is Teaching Like Ted Lasso.
Dr. Kathryn Norton Coffey is the elementary math specialist for Muskegon Public Schools. Her academic interests include curriculum, instruction, and the use of games in teaching and learning mathematics. Full disclosure, Dave is Kathy's spouse. This discussion was recorded over Zoom. Very happy to welcome Kathy Coffey to the Teaching Like Ted Lasso podcast. You may notice a connection with my co-host and the progenitor of Teaching Like Ted Lasso. Welcome, Kathy. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right.
I always wanted to say that. I feel like I'm on NPR.
Oh, no, I should be doing my Terry Gross impersonation. Especially happy to have you on here and get to talk to you about this because you are a teacher that I've learned from so much, right?
Mm.
So through the connection with Dave, you had me in your classroom a couple times, and you're connecting mathematics with literacy was just really inspirational, as well as so many of the things from your literacy teaching and then coaching. So I am super excited to have you talking about these things today.
Well, thank you.
You started elementary teaching in 1997, and you were just telling me how really it started with a trip to Toys R Us.
It did. Yeah, I got hired the day school started, an abundance of kindergartners, and they needed an extra halftime section. So I got hired and they gave me the credit card and sent me to buy some toys and games for the like for the kitchen and the housekeeping center and for the sand table and measuring cups and other play items for the sandbox or the sand table. And yeah, it started out with play.
Yeah. So after teaching for a few years, you became a literacy specialist, both kind of in your own training and then in coaching other teachers. How did that kind of expand your teaching or change what was happening in your classroom?
What was really nice about it, I went to a summer institute on literacy, and that's when I got exposed to Mosaic of Thought, Debbie Miller's Debbie Miller's work and all that. And what was really nice for me was that training was job embedded. So I didn't leave the classroom. I was still a classroom teacher and had release days because the training was happening, during the school year. I had release days for the trainings and then was also coaching at the same time. So I felt like it gave me some credibility because I'm still teaching, but I'm also was doing some coaching. Like every month we had a week where we had a few days off and our coach would come and she did side-by-side coaching. And how did it change? Your question was, how did it change?
Either your understanding of teaching or kind of change what was happening in your classroom?
Yeah, I think that I guess I kind of always saw myself more as a facilitator than like a deliverer of knowledge. And so, but it reinforced that for me that that I saw teaching more as being a facilitator and teaching kids how to learn themselves, how to discover things and how to learn. I mean, it really gets into that, just reinforce that constructivist kind of disposition that I really already had.
Yeah. And it feels like there's a kind of a deep connection between discovery and play.
Mm-hmm. There is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Go ahead.
I think that kids learn so much better when they're discovering it themselves than when, I mean, you can ask purposeful questions and you can lead them to certain ideas or, give them experiences that will help them come to something, but I think they learn better when they come to it themselves.
Yeah.
And a lot of that happens through play.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So eventually, though, you did leave the classroom to pursue a doctorate in education.
I did. Yep.
Um, uh, do you want to talk about kind of what you specialized in, or do you?
Sure. Well, I wanted to be a principal. I don't know if I ever told you that I wanted to be a
I don't
principal
know.
because I thought, kind of went through this progression of, I taught for that 7 or 8 years and then started doing kind of the coaching and some leadership with adults. And I felt like I could make an impact, potentially making a bigger impact even as a building leader.
Mhm.
So I did an ed specialist through Grand Valley, and um, Grand Valley has a cooperative program with Eastern Michigan University where your credits, um, those credits for your specialist transfer over to your PhD. So you're not quite halfway done, but
It's
it's
a
about that.
significant step.
So
Yeah.
my PhD is in education leadership.
Okay.
So, but the thing I learned in one of my defense, when I think I was defending my proposal, um, one of my committee members asked me, "So, what do you want to learn from this?" And
Oh, wow.
I had prepared for every question on earth except for that one, and I really didn't know, uh, and it I really didn't know. And then when it got to actually my final defense, I was prepared, and I knew he wouldn't like what he heard, what I was going to say. But what I learned was that I didn't really want to be a principal. that
Yeah.
that I really that it I it, that evaluative nature of being a principal was not, because my research was around the the impact and the lived experience of teachers in Michigan, um, around the legislation of the teacher evaluation, that happened, I think, in 2011. I think
Right.
that's when Michigan adopted some of that, and the experiences that the teachers had were just miserable and horrible. And it's like I learned I really don't want to be doing something like that to or with teachers, and because of the legislation there's really no way around it. You can't be a principal and not do these things. I mean, there's
Right.
probably ways that they might not have to be the experiences that the teachers had, but I didn't interview anybody that had a good experience in any way. It was always fraught with anxiety and fear and dread, and even if they loved their principal, it was just not something
Yeah.
that's not
The
something I would.
process wasn't good.
Okay.
Right.
So that's and maybe that goes with the play. I don't want to I don't want to be this serious. I mean, I don't want to have to evaluate in that way, like kind of ends up kind of being a punitive way, or I don't want to. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think
So it
it's
sounds like maybe we should have you back for the be curious, not judgmental
oh,
podcast. Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Maybe. Yeah.
all
Yeah.
right. So true to that, you are not a principal. You're
I am not. No.
you're the elementary math specialist for Muskegon Public Schools.
Right.
And what does that work involve?
It involves it's a whole host of things, but I support 4 buildings, elementary buildings of K-5 elementary teachers. Everything I do is non-evaluative. It's the perfect position for me. I support them with implementing our the everyday math curriculum that we're currently using. In fact, we're on a 7-year curriculum cycle, so we'll be starting a curriculum study also at the near the end of this year. I think that's when it's supposed to start, in March or something. I've
Okay.
never done that before, so that'll be interesting. But I manage materials. I make sure they have the math journals that they need, and get that going. I um, do in-house professional development for new teachers on
Mhm.
using the curriculum. I started in 20, 2021, started a math leadership team, a K-5 math leadership team that does we did a week-long institute on, really digging into our curriculum and everyday math has I don't know, policy is not the right word, but they say that there are certain essential components that are must do's in each lesson. It's the
Hmm.
warm up, the math message, the math message follow up, and then the summarize. And then there's so much more involved in the lesson, and because it's a full service curriculum, if you will, that you
Right.
can't possibly do all of the options in a day, and that kind of sets some teachers back because they end up focusing on some things that might not be really important
Yeah.
necessarily. So we met, and we developed some, we call it the guaranteed components for each grade level. And it was we took for granted that the warm up, the math message, and the summarize were the already given essentials. And then the teachers decided as a team, what are the other components within each lesson that we guarantee that every Muskegon Public School student will experience. Um, and then if you want to do more, you can do more.
Right.
If a teacher wants to do more.
Well,
So we did.
yeah, and I love the nature of like the collaborative nature and the capacity building kind of ways you've structured the
Yes.
leadership team and your work there.
Yeah. I had lots of help from my friends at the ISD, Kristen, I'm going to call it Kristen Frank. She's no longer with Muskegon ISD. She's with Math Recovery
Right.
now at the national level. And then Danielle Voskuil and Carrie Carlson and Lauren Johnson. Lauren Johnson's actually a Muskegon public school teacher, but she's actually our one of our reading facilitators, but she's also a math recovery person. So they really helped, and we kept focused. That building capacity in our teachers was number one that we wanted to do. We want to build their math confidence and knowledge, and also them as their capacity to do this work.
Yeah. Oh, terrific. Okay. So, I could talk to you all day about teaching stuff. So, but we have a purpose here.
Okay.
So we're trying to think about play in the classroom.
Hmm.
And so, where do you see, or what's the nature of why play should happen in lessons?
And we're talking specifically with math or just with teaching or
You can tell, I mean, because Dave and I, right? So we come to it from this math perspective,
sure.
but we're interested in just kind of in school and teaching and learning.
Right. I mean, I think it's important for all subject areas. I mean, I think about first graders. I think like at the beginning of the year, some of the read to self things they're playing, right? I mean,
Mm,
they're emulating or simulating what real readers do. They might not really be reading yet, but
mm,
they're playing with books and they're playing with that language. Um, and then in math, I just think if I have a philosophy that games are to math as books are to reading. That kids they have to play games in order to to give them a purpose, number one, and to be able to have fun while they're learning. It has to be something. If you want to learn something, it should be pleasurable. So the games give them that context as well. So I just think it's an essential part of of learning and education in and I think if that's K-12 or actually probably K, you know, more than K to 101. So, but no, I think it's essential. But I think that it just sets a context where they're learning and they're almost even unaware that they're learning,
right.
and yet they are.
Yeah, because the engagement's there, and
Hmm.
um, they 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 try so many more things than they ever would on a worksheet or on an assignment.
Right. And I don't know, this is Dave's quote, not mine, so I'm going to kind of steal it. I think is it Piaget who says that when children play, they try things out that are beyond what they normally could do. And
Right.
and that's probably not the exact wording, but I think they do. They try that, and then they also the play takes away that evaluative piece, right?
Hmm.
It allows them to make mistakes and try things out and develop strategies with whether it's math or reading, right? So yeah, I just think it sets um, a, a good environment for learning.
Yeah. It was interesting. Last year, we were working with a first grader who, at the very start of the semester, um, that evaluation piece was big to her. Like, if she didn't win the game,
Hmm.
she was mad that she
Hmm.
had done something wrong. And as she got kind of freed from that, it was amazing to see her engage throughout the
Hmm.
semester and then like learn to congratulate, the other first graders she was playing with, and could talk about it being a good game independent of whether she won or lost, right?
Hmm.
She enjoyed the
Right, right.
playing of it.
And I think you can develop cooperative games too, where you're the team, and it's the team that wins,
Right.
not as necessarily individuals.
Yeah.
So for those students who have struggle with that,
So
maybe
I don't mean to cut you off.
that's okay. I'm
Okay.
good.
So, in your work with teachers, and you mentioned while we were chatting before about everyday math really comes it's chock full of games. Do you feel like you've seen barriers to teachers for them being able to use the games, or barriers to introducing play into the classroom?
I have, and I one of the things that I just really emphasize in the work that I do is that we have to play the games. The games are for practice. The games are for memory, like to keep the strategies, and let's see, even if it's just facts, it keeps them in mind and it keeps kids coming back to them.
Mhm.
But this, I think, some of the barriers are that we don't think play is serious.
Mhm.
That's not the teaching only is the learning is only happening when a teacher is actually speaking and teaching.
Right.
That can be one, not with every, and I think it varies. It's not like every teacher has the exact same set of barriers, right?
Right.
Different people. But organizing them is also a challenge.
Mm.
Getting them organized. How am I going to do this? How am I going to make the materials manageable? Because it always involves pieces and parts and
Right.
paper, and if I want them to do this every day or a few times a week, am I going to have to print papers, or is there some way I can make a recording sheet that can be used over and over? So some of it is just sort of like systems thinking, like how am I going to make this work in my classroom? Um, Sometimes I see this is less, but sometimes I see that games get withheld from students as a punishment or a reward. You
Right.
can only play the games. If somebody decides that some teachers do a game of everyday math teaches 4 lessons a week. So often teachers will be on Wednesday or Friday is our game day or whatever. And you can only play games if you do all of this, and this. And the kids need to play whether they've done
Right.
it doesn't need to be a reward. It is an integral part of the learning is happening or needs to happen, and so
Yeah.
that can be a barrier.
So much of that discussion over the mathematics with the other learners, right? It
Mhm.
happens in the games.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, speaking of that, there's another worry that comes. I've heard from administrators that, well, what if they're practicing it wrong? What if they're playing the game wrong? But sometimes it's those discussions of when they're sometimes discovering something new or creating a new game. So I don't usually worry about that, but I hear that is often a concern of administrators.
Right. And
Right.
it's yeah, it's natural to me on one level. But if you get a chance to see the learning happening with the play, I feel like it goes away. Right. So that's
Right.
yeah.
Right. Right. Well, and you can't leave that learning to chance. We have to monitor what the students are doing and checking in with them, making sure. But I don't know. I think that the worry is that if they play it wrong a whole bunch, then they're never gonna know the difference but often it's that aha when they figure out that you've been playing this wrong, that actually the learning happens.
Hmm.
Um, I think about for 5 years, the type of study I did was a phenomenology. So one of the pieces of that is you have to do this thing called it's spelled EPOCHE. And I was pronouncing it epoch for 3 years probably with my advisor, with my chair, and with my committee, and nobody corrected me.
Oh, wow.
And then I was watching a video about doing an epoche. I tell you, I practiced it wrong for 3 years.
Yeah.
I have never said it wrong. It's like that learning
Yeah.
that what it is. That was the learning moment. Was when I realized I'd been saying it wrong, and yeah, bless their hearts for not telling me.
Yeah. How would you suggest a teacher might get started? Right? Maybe they have some resources already if they've got a curriculum that has them. But kind of what's the internal thing that has to happen for a teacher to start engaging their learners in play?
The internal, like the thinking, the
Right.
teacher's thinking. Yeah, I think that it's recognizing that the play is essential, that this isn't frivolous. um oh, I know another barrier um came up just as you were asked that question. Some teachers are worried about behaviors.
Mhm.
Yes, sometimes you do have to teach students how to take turns,
Right.
especially in the early grades. um, so that can be a not trusting your students that they will be engaged and they'll do the right things can also be a barrier. But you have to set up, you have to have it, keep in mind that this is essential, and then you have to decide, how is this going to work in my classroom? How am I going to organize the games? Am I going to put parts and pieces in baggies or 3-ring binders? That's what I've been doing most recently. How am I going to organize them? What are the materials they're going to need? And then you have to teach the kids how to do it, right?
Yeah.
You have to teach them what you want them to do. Teach, setting up, what's our procedure for getting out the games? What's our procedure for playing the game? We keep the pieces on the table. I think of one that I had with when we were using snap cubes. If you can't, keep your trains to lower than your knee, no longer than, or no higher than your knee, because they sometimes will go, they'll do
As high
other
as it
things.
goes. Yeah.
Right. So we had some guy. You have to have the guidelines, but not letting, and when it doesn't go well, not letting that deter you. That
Mm.
I just need. So what was it that fell apart? Is it that they forgot how to go get the materials? They um, maybe they don't know how to share their thinking with a friend. Maybe they need a little lesson on with sentence starters, like I got, you know, um, uh, I'll say tens go fish. Maybe they don't know how to say, John, do you have a blank?
Right.
And maybe the other person has never played Go Fish and they need a sentence starter saying, no, go fish or whatever. So sometimes you have to teach them the language. In, um, but again, keeping in mind that it's so essential that you can't let it fall apart. That if it does fall apart, that you can't let that deter you. That there's some other element that we can teach the students that can help them and access the games.
Yeah. The importance of it makes it worth the effort to get those
Yes,
routines going and get that culture established.
right.
Yeah.
And
And this,
you're teaching them so much more too than just, I'm thinking I'm going to focus on math because that's where my head is these days. But you're teaching them so much more about than just math. You're teaching them social skills. You're building that, helping them take turns and building that prefrontal cortex in their brain, and you're just teaching them so much more. And
yeah.
that is also the part that makes it worth it. That I'm not just teaching content. I'm teaching something bigger.
Yeah, I really hear that because as you were talking, I was thinking about Well, if my students don't know about taking turns, I want them to know that, and if they don't know how to ask people or how to collaborate or how to set up and put away, right? That those are things I want them to learn also.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
And I want to build, because I want to build capacity. Like I want to build capacity in my teachers. I want to build capacity in the students that they can independently go get materials out, play the game, and put them away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, nice. Okay. Well, there is one more question. I promise it is not evaluative.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, there's a
But
lot of judgment around this one, I think.
oh, there can be, right? But
I think I know
for
what it
me
is.
asking you, I promise you, it is not. So, would you rather be panda or lion?
Well, I'm going to go out on the limb and say I would rather be a panda.
All right.
I just think that, and I guess for myself, I'm thinking about grown animals at this point, not tight like lion cubs playing and tumbling in The Lion King, um, because all children. That's the other thing. All mammals play to some extent,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
So that's how they're learning. But I think I would rather be a panda. Um, I really don't want to have to kill something to eat it. Like a panda's like they get, I mean, and maybe they do, and I don't even know about that. But in my mind, they just seem like they are more peaceful and just seems, I don't know.
I'm with you. I'm signing up for the bamboo.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds like sounds like a good place to be.
Very good. Okay. Well, I can't thank you enough, Kathy. I really appreciate you talking with us, and I hope we get to talk again.
I hope so too.
All
Thanks,
righty.
John.
Thanks, Kathy.
Yep. Bye.
A special thanks to Joshua Davis for letting us use his music at the beginning and ending of this episode.